Recently, I reviewed one of the literature community's favorite books, Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. And despite me thinking that it was a very good book with excellent writing, I did have some critiques of it, which were met with some pretty interesting responses. So I thought I would give my opinion on how to handle criticism of books and art in general that you really like. First, I just want to point out, nobody wants to be made to feel like they are stupid for having the opinions that they have. And sometimes people can get that impression if they really like something and somebody else criticizes that thing. So my very first tip on how to handle criticism of things that you like is to not take it personally. Unless somebody explicitly says you're stupid for liking this thing, you shouldn't just assume that that is what they mean. And this goes for the Blood Meridian review or any review that I've ever done. If that's the impression you got from what I was saying, my apologies. That is never what I mean to say unless I actually say it, which I don't think I have. And I did get a good amount of comments of people very clearly just lashing out because they felt emotionally triggered by me having a critique of this book, even though I think it was a good book and I said as much. Comments like, "You're an idiot. Now I know I don't have to watch any more of your videos because your opinion sucks." People commenting on my body, calling me fat or bald, all kinds of weird stuff. Basically stuff that serves no purpose whatsoever other than the person making the comment trying to feel like they are defending themselves and getting one back on the person that they disagree with. But there's a few things you should keep in mind before you make comments like that. Number one, the internet does not differentiate between positive and negative engagement. All these platforms want to do is keep people on the platform for as long as possible so they can show you as many ads as possible, which is how they make money. And anytime they see somebody engaging with a piece of content, commenting and then replying and replying and replying, that signals their algorithm to say people are really engaged in this, whether it's negative or positive engagement, so let's show it to more people. So if you don't like the thing that you're seeing, by leaving that nasty comment that might give you that 5 seconds of feeling like you're a big tough man for defending a book that you didn't write, it's really just helping to promote that thing even more. Now, people are sometimes quick to say, oh, one single comment's not going to make a difference. And you know what? You're right. However, that's also not really a great argument because basically you're just saying, I recognize I'm a speck of dust in the mortar between the bricks of this foundation. Not to mention, every time you leave a comment, it's going to open up the opportunity for the creator to reply and for other people to reply, to see that comment and to either like it and engage with it or add to it. So usually one comment is becoming 5, 10, 20, sometimes even more. Which is exactly why when people leave nasty comments like that, I don't delete them, I don't block them from the channel, I usually just troll them. Because if you aren't here to actually have a good faith discussion, I'm just going to leverage you while you're here to get more engagement out of you. Now let me be clear about something. I am here to have a good faith discussion. I don't have opinions that are intentionally inflammatory because that's what I like to do or I think it's better for engagement, because it's not. Really, the book space is about building community, and having opinions that go against the grain is not a great way to do that. We lost probably about 30 or 40 subscribers. Fortunately, about 30 or 40 more people hopped on because of that video, so it was kind of like a net wash. But I don't have these opinions just to have them, for clicks and engagement. I'm just giving you my honest thoughts. The second thing you need to keep in mind if you are thinking about or do respond in that manner is, what do you actually think you're going to accomplish with this? Maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't care to change my mind. Maybe you don't care to actually give a different viewpoint. And maybe you are just here to try to get some licks in. But no one's ever going to read a comment and be like, oh my God, I'm bald? Oh, I was so wrong about Blood Meridian. Thank you for this person pointing out that I'm bald. Or this take is laughable. Oh, wow, you know what? You're right, random stranger on the internet whose name and face I can't see or know. I am so wrong about this book. Thank you for pointing it out to me. So really the point is, it doesn't do anything for you. It only does something for me with the engagement. Now, because of that, I'm fine with it. Keep doing it if you want to. That's cool. But the other thing I do want you to think about before you leave comments like that, not necessarily on my videos, but elsewhere on the internet, is that not everyone can take that kind of criticism. You will actually hurt people by leaving comments like that. And if that's your goal is to just hurt somebody emotionally or psychologically because they have a different opinion as you on a piece of art or a book, you're a f***ing piece of shit. Maybe your comment isn't the first comment, but it's the one that kind of pushed somebody over the edge and they delete their channel right before they were really about to hit the goals that they had set out for themselves. Or worse, what if your comment is the comment that pushes somebody over the edge that causes them to self-harm? Now, this is the internet. It's a big place. You probably aren't going to ever know if what you said had that effect on somebody, so you're never actually going to have to live with that guilt, but you should be more cognizant of the things that you say to people on the internet. And I could honestly take my own advice here, because sometimes I do clap back probably a little bit too hard at people when I can tell they have bad faith comments. Don't take somebody criticizing something you like personally. The second thing I want to talk about, and this one should be very obvious but sometimes isn't, is that art is subjective. It's subject to our personal experiences going into our contact with that piece of art, the things that we've read or studied previously, where we're at in our life and our reading journey when we read a particular book. And a lot of times people are trying to say that their point of view is the correct one when there really is no correct one. I think this was really highlighted by a lot of the comments that were saying, you're wrong about this particular take on Blood Meridian because of X, Y, or Z. And X, Y, and Z were all different things. Now, some of the points that people made could coexist in conjunction with one another if you did a little mental legwork to kind of suss out how that would make sense. But some of these opinions that people were saying, Tony, you're dead wrong, they were so confident that their opinion was the correct one, yet it was in complete contradiction to an opinion that somebody else had left that also stated that their opinion was the correct one. I think the most important thing when you're criticizing a piece of work is to have a justification for that criticism. Don't just tell me you thought something was good or something was bad. People will say, like, that book sucks. Okay, why? Well, the writing was bad. Okay, how? Well, it just wasn't good. Okay, give me an example. Pull a sentence or paragraph or passage from that book. Show me how that is bad. And this was an interesting thing with the concept of Blood Meridian not being able to be adapted into a film. I thought that the book was written in a very cinematic way. It had a very cinematic feel to it. And I suggested that possibly Cormac McCarthy had the idea of adapting it into a film when he wrote it, which people seem to take a lot of offense to, which doesn't necessarily mean a book is bad, but we'll leave that alone for a moment. But people, all they would say is, oh, this is famously unadaptable. This is famously unadaptable. People have been saying it's unadaptable. Okay, but why? Now, some people did actually bring an answer to that question when I asked about it. Some people said it was too violent for the time and a film that violent would never get made. I think that's a valid response. Some people said that the story is just a little bit too ambiguous. I think that has some weight to it as well. But I also have a reason for why I think it would make a good film. It's extremely beautifully written. The descriptions of the landscape and the characters are so rich and vivid. They are very visual. People talk about Cormac McCarthy painting scenes with his writing all the time. That would make something very easy to adapt into a visual art like film. Further, I think that the violence is described so accurately and in such a clear-cut and, again, vivid way that the action sequences would lend itself very well to a visual medium. So when you are hearing somebody criticize something that you like or are critical of it, ask yourself, do they actually have a reason for their criticism, and were they able to articulate it? In my opinion, I think I was doing that. Maybe I didn't do a very good job. But to be honest, even the comments where people were very polite, a lot of times they didn't give an actual explanation of why they disagreed with my opinion. So I appreciate people being cordial and friendly, but give me something more. Let's have an actual conversation about it. In fact, that did happen. Fortunately, there were some great comments that gave me a lot to chew on. So when someone comes in and says, hey, you should check out this resource, you should, check out this critique or whatever, that's a really helpful thing to do. And then you can have an actual dialogue about it. I can go off and read that stuff or look into it and then come back and respond to those comments, or maybe even make a whole secondary video about it. But if you're not doing that, you are basically guilty of the thing you're accusing me of, which is a lot of people said, oh, you just didn't get it. You're not smart enough to have read this book, which is like the most boring and trite and troped out response to somebody that criticizes something you don't like. But you are basically saying, like, I can't have a more in-depth discussion about this book with somebody that has the wrong opinion about it. There are right opinions and wrong opinions, and you have the wrong one, so there's no point in having a conversation. Which to me suggests that you aren't actually interested in literature, because the point of literature is to engage with the art itself, but also other people in your society, in your community, other people who have also come in contact with that art. And if you're not interested in doing that, you're just interested in saying you have the right opinion, you have the wrong opinion, you're kind of just trying to be in the in crowd. Moving on to the third thing you should keep in mind when people are criticizing art that you like. I really encourage you to listen, because I felt like a lot of people did not listen when I made that review. Now, this was highlighted by the negative comments, but also some of the quote unquote positive comments, because people who were seemingly in support of what I was saying left comments like, I also hated Blood Meridian. Hold the f*** on. I never said I hated this book. I never said it's a bad book. My exact words were, this book is very good. It was one of my more enjoyable reading experiences of the year. I will probably reread it because I probably missed some things. And if they make it into a film, which last I checked, that is actually happening, I will go watch it. However, even things that are very good can be hyped up too much. And people took away from that, Tony thinks the book sucks. Tony hates Blood Meridian. He has the wrong opinion about Blood Meridian. So maybe this should have been the first tip, but it is very important to listen when people talk. And I know it's hard to do in our modern age of distraction. However, we are talking about literature. We are supposed to have nuanced opinions about this type of art. Which brings me to my next point, which is if you are constantly looking for a reason to write off somebody's opinion about this, and this was highlighted in two different ways in this particular case. First, people were asking me, well, tell me what some of your other favorite books are, so then they can somehow kind of judge my taste in general and then decide if my opinion is worth hearing or not. And secondly, they were saying, oh, you mentioned that Cormac McCarthy groomed this kid and trafficked her, so you were just looking for a reason to dislike the book. Those are logically fallacious arguments, because you are not addressing the actual substance of the arguments I put forward for my opinion. If you have a problem with those arguments, if you find flaws in them or reasons why they don't make sense, address it, touch on it, point it out, give me a different perspective, help me get to where you are. But if you just say, oh, you don't like the book because Cormac McCarthy groomed a kid, well, I mean, first of all, it's a little weird that you're trying to frame my opinion of not liking child grooming as weird, because that should be the default opinion. Everyone going into reading Cormac McCarthy should be going in with the opinion that grooming children is wrong. But like the points I made before, it's not really conducive to an actual conversation about the art. Because if you just try to write off my opinion as I was like trying to find a reason not to like the book, well, what am I supposed to do with that? I already addressed it in the first video, so my only other choice is just go, nuh-uh. Okay, you didn't believe me the first time around, so what difference does it make for me to say, no, that's not correct? You are not bringing anything to the table where we can actually have a legitimate conversation about this art. And if you are constantly looking for reasons to discredit somebody's opinion, ask yourself, why you think this piece of art is above criticism. And if your answer is, well, it's not above criticism, okay, then why is this particular person's criticism of it not okay, but others might be? The fifth thing that you should keep in mind when someone is criticizing something that you like is to not conflate how good something is with how much you like it. And let me explain what I mean by that. One of the most lauded books in American literature is Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow. I fully appreciate the genius of Thomas Pynchon, the masterful craftsmanship of that work, and I understand what the work is trying to do, and I understand its place in the canon of American literature. However, my experience reading that book is not as enjoyable as many, many other books written by much lesser talented people who have a much looser grip on what they're doing. I use this example all the time. Do I think Kesha is a better musical artist than Mozart? No, I do not. But more often than not, I would probably prefer to listen to Kesha's first album than I would listen to Mozart. Sometimes I want to listen to Mozart. Sometimes I'm in the mood for classical music. But most of the time, I have to be in the right headspace for that. So therefore, I could have things that detracted from my enjoyment of a book like Blood Meridian, even though I did enjoy reading it, and still appreciate it for the artistry of the writing. And the last thing I would ask you to consider when you are facing criticism of something you like is ask yourself the question, do I want to live in a world where everyone has the same opinions? Now, it's not ideal if nobody shares your opinion, right? Like if you are excited about a book, you want to have people who are also excited about it to talk with about it in an excited way. However, if everyone just felt the exact same way about it, there really wouldn't be a whole lot to discuss and things would be kind of boring. And again, having a different opinion about a piece of art is not a value judgment about you or necessarily other people. In fact, my podcast co-host Andy, who's one of my best friends, we disagree about a lot of books. We disagree about a lot of art in general. So I thought it was kind of funny to see so many people, 30 or so, unsubscribe from the channel because of my opinion over one book. Now, maybe they were already kind of on the fence and they don't like some of my other takes. I don't know. Very rarely do I post a video and it shows a up and down in subscribers. It's typically only up. I get it. Blood Meridian is a very popular book within the literature community, and for good reason. It's an excellently written book. However, I just felt that a lot of people overhype it for the reasons that I gave in that video. And I want you to ask yourself this question. Would you have rather that I made a video just saying what everyone else has said about Blood Meridian because I was afraid to be honest, because I was afraid to go against the grain, because I was afraid that people were going to unsubscribe from my channel? Or would you prefer for me to give my honest opinion even if you don't agree with that opinion? Hopefully you would choose the latter, but maybe you prefer for me to just go in line with everybody else. It certainly would have been better for my channel if I had done that, but that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to share my thoughts on books and the reading community at large. Some of those thoughts are more fleshed out than others. Some of the topics I talk about, I have more firsthand experience and expertise in, and some I don't. But what you can always expect from this channel are honesty, welcoming of good faith conversation, even if those opinions conflict with mine, and a love of books.